Retro.
Are you an aspiring Jedi, or do you dabble with the dark side of the Force?
Regardless of whether you fancy yourself a defender of the light or an aspiring Sith Lord, you're going to need a lightsaber.
Podcast Stardust is pleased to partner with Saber Masters, the creators of high-quality, durable, and affordable lightsabers.
Saber Masters is preparing to launch the Ultimate Lightsaber 2.0, and right now you can get 2 for the price of 1.
So, check out the link in our show notes and go get your Ultimate Lightsabers from Saber Masters.
And don't forget to use our referral code Stardust to save $10 at checkout.
And each purchase using our referral code helps support Podcast Stardust.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall, voice of Hera and Rook Cast, and you're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. Their behavior is continually unexpected.
Hello and welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And we are discussing the penultimate episode of The Bad Batch in this episode. But first, Jay can remind everybody where we can be found around the internet.
Absolutely. We are conveniently found on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Podcast Stardust.
All right, the dish is aligned, the signal is boosted to maximum output, the shield is down, we are now broadcasting to the galaxy. Let's get into it. So we are discussing episode 14 of season 3 of The Bad Batch, which is called Flash Strike. This is a full spoiler discussion. So if you haven't watched it yet or don't want to be spoiled, now's your warning. Go watch it. Okay. Given people enough time, Jay, you want to go ahead and give us the summary of this episode, please?
Sure. I can't believe we're to this point where we're almost at the end. But here we go. The Bad Batch make it to Tantiss, but Hemlock was expecting them. Their stolen shuttle is shot down, and they are forced to make their way to the base on foot while Imperial stormtroopers and clone commandos search for them. Rampart accidentally startles a beast and then is captured by stormtroopers in the ensuing chaos. Having been separated from the rest of the group, Echo disguises himself as a stormtrooper and finds the science lab where he encounters Dr. Emery Carr, who tells him they will have to trust her if they're going to rescue the children. Meanwhile, Omega takes advantage of the distraction caused by the Batch's arrival to scout out an escape route, which leads her to the captive Zillo Beast.
So, yeah, this is still an unexpected turn for me here. What do you think about this episode, Jay?
Yeah, it definitely did. I still don't know how they're going to wrap up everything that needs to happen in one episode unless it's going to be like an hour runtime. But yeah, there was definitely some surprising twists and turns here. And then some other things that I kind of figured might come to fruition that kind of left some breadcrumbs for that in this episode as well. But yeah.
Yeah, I really like this one. I think they've kept up a tone and a pace that really works well with the past couple episodes, which have all been about finding Tantiss and working on rescuing Omega. And this keeps up that pace, keeps up that tone. I think this was another fantastic episode of the show. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what they do with the finale. I'm thinking, I don't know that they go like hour long, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was like 30, 40, maybe even 50 minutes. When we come to next week, there's a lot to wrap up there, and since it is the finale, they got to come up with something as a send off for these characters.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll get into some thoughts on that when we get to kind of get through the episode here.
Yes, we'll put a pin in that.
Right. Okay. So first off, the opening music I thought was really great. Right after we got the title card here, some fantastic work by Kevin Kiner and his team there. Did you happen to notice that when you're watching?
I didn't notice specifically. I just know that all of the music has been fantastic, but it didn't stick out to me as much as obviously it stuck out to you. Now I'm going to have to go back and watch it again.
So yeah. I mean, I don't know what the track is called. Don't even know how to properly describe it, but I was like, well, this is setting a mood. This is cool.
Mhm.
But then we get right into it with the Bad Batch. They're in their shuttle attached to the bottom side of the science vessel. And meanwhile, Echo is aboard that science vessel and he's scanning the database trying to get information. And he has to hide before a droid shows up. As they get closer to Wayland, where the Tantiss base is located, they realize that they're going to have to detach from the science vessel so that they're not detected on approach. And of course, that means Echo's going to have to find his own way. And Echo does that by taking the armor from that stormtrooper he stunned previously and then shooting the droid and stealing the droid's hand. So
Yes.
let's start there for a second. What do you think about Echo's escapades in this
Oh my
episode?
goodness. He was it was funny, but just enough humor to where it wasn't making it corny. But even when he said to that droid, "Thanks for the hand," and then immediately though, the first thing I thought was, "Oh no, is he going to not have his droid arm then when he needs it?" So it was pretty cool the way that he was able to switch things out like that. It just reminded me
Mhm.
like of Captain Hook, or so I'm rewatching Once Upon a Time. So the character Hook in there, he can take his hook off and then put it back on and whenever he needs to and attach an actual hand. And so that's exactly what it reminded me of. But at first it was, you could tell that Echo was almost like, oh no, I'm gonna have to do this. And he just figured it out and blended right in and was able to get done what he needed to do.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that the question came up amongst the rest of the Bad Batch. Like, what about Echo? Well, he'll find out his own way. There's like
Hmm.
no doubt in any of their minds that that's what he'll do. That
Oh
he's got
yeah.
that capabilities, and so it's just been a constant with this team, the trust that they have in each other. And the thing about that is that in retrospect, it really magnifies how big a deal Tech's death was.
Oh
Be
yeah.
because they always were able to count on each other and their abilities to get the thing done. And then Tech, they've gotten to that was the one spot that they could not get out of. Now we might get another one next week, but with the finale, but we'll see.
Hmm.
But yeah, I really enjoyed Echo in this one with him doing everything he had to do to get around that base, and of course going down the droid chute again was fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Same way out of the science vessels he got into it,
Uh-huh.
and just blending in with another squad to get around there. And then, every time he found a data terminal, just plug it in and, finding what he could before he had to move on to the next one. So,
Yep. Yep, indeed.
yeah. Okay. So news travels fast. Tantiss found out that the Bad Batch were there at Coruscant, and they had infiltrated the base with uh, disgraced, former Vice Admiral Rampart, and then they were seen flying away when the science vessel left. And the first presumption is by, I guess that's Scorch, but one of the super commandos, is that they might have tracked the science vessel. But Hemlock is suspecting that they're on their way as well and dispatches those Alpha Nimbus V Wing fighters. It's confusing that Star Wars has two different ships called V Wings. If you're trying to
Mhm.
do research, by the way, you might not get the ship you're looking for. Um,
Oh.
yeah, because they're both from Revenge of the Sith.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah. Anyway, and so they get shot down, but they make that escape by using the repelling lines to get out of the ship and jump off into the forest. So, what do you think of that sequence?
Well, first of all, the part where they were falling down to the surface of Wayland and then they shut the engines off was a very Rey move from The Force Awakens with the Millennium Falcon, where she flips
Mm-hmm.
the Falcon upside down and just does that free fall
Mm-hmm.
and then shoots from underneath and then engages the engines again. But once
Yeah,
again, I mean, just the
this time they were
repelling.
like, yeah, this time that they were crashing. So
Right. Yeah.
they didn't quite have the Ray's skills there to pull off there, and of course they also didn't have the opportunity.
Right, but it was still just kinda that same sort of vantage point kinda thing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the repelling lines, once again, it was like, okay, there's a very good possibility that someone could not make it out of this, and I kinda wondered if it was gonna be Rampart. And when they, of course, got down to the surface and they said, "Did Rampart make it?" And Hunter's like, "Unfortunately, yes.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like, I think, part of him was sort of being coy and sarcastic about it, but, I mean, realistically, my husband even said right out when we were watching this, he said, "Rampart's a liability." I'm like, "Yeah, that's kind of a good way to put it," but yet they need him at the same time. But then again, the batch isn't gonna just leave someone to die, even if it is Rampart. They're not gonna do that purposely.
Mhm. Yeah, they're not gonna get broken up if something happens to him, but they're also
No.
not going to let something happen to him just for the sake of
Right.
getting rid of him. Yeah, I kept
Exactly.
thinking during this episode, the part of C-3PO is being played by former Vice Admiral Rampart
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
because he
He
just
complains yeah.
yeah, he complains, he's loud, he makes noise, and he's so put upon. Of course, he doesn't have any of 3PO's, like, really likable qualities, because he is the former villain. Now,
Mhm.
he's
Mhm.
kind of redeemed himself in some ways, but still, it's just, when, all of his bumbling around and getting into trouble just remind me of 3PO.
Oh, yeah. And I did like the little side conversation that he and Echo had, or
Mhm.
not Echo, sorry, Crosshair had when, he was saying we were both betrayed by the Empire, and Hemlock, or gosh, I can't even talk tonight, I swear. And Rampart was saying something about, you're normally operating on your own, and he said, "Well, I've changed. You're looking out for your own interests," is what Rampart says, and Crosshair says, "Well, I've changed."
Yeah, and then Rampart's like, "We'll see about that,"
Mhm.
because he doesn't believe it. Because
Mhm.
he says we're both the same in that regards, and that's what Rampart's doing. He's looking out for number one, and he thinks Crosshair is doing the same. But Crosshair says in this episode, after Wrecker points out, the last time we were here, you were sneaking out of this space, and now you're sneaking back in. And Crosshair says, I'd rather not be doing either,
Mhm.
but Omega wouldn't leave me behind, and there's no way I'm leaving her behind here.
Right. Oh,
And this
yeah.
just goes back to what he was telling Hauser and them several episodes ago when he was asked what changed. He's like, yeah, I'm big on loyalty, and I gave my loyalty to the Empire, and they betrayed me. Obviously, I'm paraphrasing here,
Sure.
and so Omega was loyal to him. The Bad Batch is loyal to him, and that's where he's investing his loyalty.
Mhm.
And and so it is true to character. I think Rampart's just wrong about that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm really hoping they were not foreshadowing something in the final episode here. I don't think they are, but I'm gonna be really distraught if they did.
Oh, I know. Well, I think there's a lot of things that we've been presented with that we were intended to think and overthink about
Mhm,
to see, ooh, could it go this way or could it go that way? Which is really the brilliance of the script writing and the storytelling, if you think
mhm.
about it, because it's making us go down those paths, which I think is actually super cool.
So, was this creature that they stumbled upon the same one that we saw way back in the beginning of the season when, Crosshair and Omega were making their escape from the base?
I don't know. I was trying to figure that out myself, but it seemed like it had different type of coloring to it. Like the feathers or the, whatever it has, it was almost like scales like a dragon, but yet they look kind of feathery, were more like a green and gold
Mhm.
is what I was picking up on my screen anyways. But I couldn't tell if it was the same creature or not. What did you think?
Well, I didn't get a chance to go back and check out that episode to find out because we're recording this the same day the episode came out, which is
Yes, we
not what we
are.
normally do.
Exactly.
And but I do remember that previous episode was in the dark when they were making their escape. So I just didn't know
Hmm.
if we were just, the difference in time of day was what was causing the difference in perception on that creature or what.
Mm,
But they don't have Badger along to help this time.
this is true.
So, but yeah, and then Rampart ends up getting captured by the stormtroopers. Well, the presumption is he's captured because he trips and falls over, and then there's three stormtroopers standing over him. So, what do you think he does from here?
That's a great question. I think like he set up before, as you were saying, he's going to be all about himself.
Hmm.
But then again, I almost wonder if the Bad Batch made a little bit of an impression on him and that he might actually think about what Crosshair said to him about the fact that the Empire had betrayed him. And maybe he will end up being an asset to them in the end. But I don't know, it's hard to predict. He could go either way, honestly. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I really don't know. I mean, I'm hoping that he doesn't. First of all, I'm not sure what exactly he can give away when it comes to them because the Empire already knows the Bad Batch is there. So they already also know why the Bad Batch, why they're there, which is to free Omega. And of
Mhm.
course, as Hunter says, we're here to get all the captured clones. Or I think
Mhm.
actually Echo says that.
Echo said, yeah.
Yeah. And so, it's not a mystery as to what's going on. And it's not like uh, Rampart can give them any particular insight as to where the batch currently is. So I'm not sure what he can do to aid the Empire in this situation. And even if he could, what's the best he could hope for? Because as we talked about previously, he took the fall for what happened on Camino
Mhm.
and Topoka City. So it's not like he can just go back to being a vice admiral, without anyone noticing and this being a PR thing for the Empire.
Mhm. Who knows?
So
Maybe they'll put him in a position to make him take the fall for whatever happens at Tansis too.
now there's that possibility, but I have a feeling that that's going to fall on Hemlock
Mhm.
when it's all said and done. So, yeah, I'm really curious if that is. I mean, my hope is that with him captured, he gets marched into Tantis, and then, as you were suggesting, he's in a position to repay the trust that the Bad Batch put him in. Whether it's like turning off a video screen at the right time or something
Mhm.
to aid them with everything that's going on there. So
Mhm.
so we'll see. But I'm
Yeah.
very curious about that. Let's shift back to Echo for a bit. So, he runs into Dr. Carr and he was, jacked into that terminal when she comes to the science lab and he can't get his hand out of there fast enough. And so she kind of notices something's up and she points out that troopers aren't supposed to be in there. And then he makes an excuse that it is a inspection going on, but everything's good. And he goes to leave, she had noticed the thing with the hand and says, you're, Echo, calls him by his name. And so they have an opportunity to discuss things. And Echo points, I should say, Emery tells Echo that Omega told her all about them. And when she says who she is, Echo says, well, Omega told us about you too. And, and then he asks her, you're a clone. How can you possibly go along with all of this? And, her response is essentially, no, well, this is my job. This is what I've been assigned to do. But from there, she says, if we're going to rescue these children,
Mhm.
you all are going to have to trust me.
Yes. Yes. So
So,
I was hoping for this.
yeah, I think we all were.
Yeah. That Emery would become that reliable asset that they were
Mhm,
looking for. But I do like how Echo said to Emery, that Omega saw something in her.
mhm,
And so I think that really touched Emery a lot. And you could just tell that Echo was almost disgusted by the fact that, when he was saying, how could you do this? How can you be a part of this? You're a clone. And of course, like you pointed out, she said, well, I was only doing my job. So she was justifying it. But you kind of wonder, who is she trying to justify it to? Just to Echo or to herself also? Convince herself that I was just doing my job. But I mean, even along the way, in the vault itself, when she tells the other doctor to, watch out for the children, and I can't think of her name, the other doctor says,
Scalder.
Scalder, thank you,
Mhm,
says, I will watch the specimens.
yep.
So I mean, you could just tell that she's humanizing these children, and as she should. And so, yeah, so it'll be really cool to see she and Echo pair up together here.
Yeah, and to that whole conflict of personalities between Emery and Scalder, that goes back to the previous week when they were in that observation level overlooking the vault, and Scalder was talking about how, she didn't like these kids talking to each other, she didn't like the games that they were playing, and Emery was firing back, it's like, this is my program, I'm the chief scientist, and I've determined this is what's best for them.
Mhm.
And, when she goes in there, she knows she's being observed as well, but she does try and do these small kindnesses for the kids. She left the doll for Eva in the
Right.
past and stuff like that. And we were asking the question, back then, is Emery looking for a way to help them? and to aid them in some sort of escape or something along those lines. And it seems like the answer to that question has been answered yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I'm so here for that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, the last part of this episode is Omega and the kids. And, they're all gathered around their tables playing their games and doing stuff when the Bad Batch arrives. And I love Omega. It's such a subtle thing, but, the kids are asking what's going on. And Omega says, well, those are the laser cannons. And when they ask what it all means, she's like, they found me. Who? My brothers.
Yes.
That
Love
was
that.
I did too, and that was super incredible, and then she decides that this is the moment that she's been waiting for. She's gonna go scout out this, the area beyond the walls of her cell to see if this is gonna work for their escape, and she tells the kids to cover her, and I love this because she's got all this training now, and she knows what that meant, but the kids are like, "What do you mean?" Like,
Exactly. It's a
yeah,
reference that they don't understand at all.
right,
Yep, it's
and
like speaking a whole of their language.
yeah, and so she's like, "Well, if I'm not back and they come here, then stall and, to buy me time," which is exactly what they have to do. And God love these kids because
Yeah.
they don't know. First it was what, Sammy says, I'm hungry and, you know, and Scalder's
So
like, I
it'll
what,
pass.
yeah, it'll pass. You'll get fed later.
Yeah, yeah.
And then Eva came up with the best one, which was, I don't feel well right now.
Typical kid,
Yeah.
trying to stay home from school or whatever. "I don't feel good. I don't feel well."
Yeah, but Scalder is like, to your point earlier, it's like, she just looks at these kids as specimens, not
Right.
kids.
Yeah.
And which begs the question is like, who would she consider a person?
That's a good question, and for Scalder to be so incredibly inhuman as a clone herself is, obviously that's what Hemlock would prefer is someone like that. But you wonder what between the nature and nurture causes Scalder to be more inhuman, whereas Emery was able to see the humanity.
Yeah. Okay, you just called her a clone, and I've been wondering about that because she looks similar to Emery, but not identical.
Hmm.
And so I've been
Hmm.
wondering if she too was a clone or if she was some other person that was brought into this.
I
But I mean,
assumed that she was.
well, it makes the most sense since they have
Hmm.
clones all over this place. I mean, it's like Hemlock and a whole bunch of clones and stormtroopers.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I don't know why it wouldn't be, but anyway, there's just enough room for some ambiguity, I suppose.
Right.
But and it goes, and Scalder is like you mentioned is the perfect disciple for Hemlock because he tells Emery Carr it's like earlier a couple episodes ago it's like don't get too familiar with the children. It's better that they're specimens, nothing more, no more nor less in this case. And that's not the way that Emery looks at them. But she's in a very difficult position. She can't have all these major overt displays of compassion for them.
Hmm.
Um, okay, but yeah, so Eva says, I don't feel well, and when that's over with, and Omega is still not back, Jax peeks his head out the door. I was like, "Hey, can I go next?" Because I love that. I mean, 'cause what else was there to do at that
Yeah,
point?
exactly.
But Scalder's like, wait your turn, and Omega manages to get back just in time. But while she was gone, she found the Zillo Beast.
Yeah.
Okay, I hadn't forgotten that the Zillo Beast showed up. Well, that was last season, right? Uh,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yes.
but I was not counting on seeing it again. This series. What did you think about its return?
I was surprised as well, and like you, it was kind of something that was on the back burner of my mind and
Mhm.
not necessarily, as you said, forgotten about it, but just sort of put aside because our focus was definitely elsewhere. But just seeing it here, and we know that the tie to cloning lies with the Zillo Beast, so I'm wondering if there's something going on even with the Zillow Beast in terms of the M counts and, putting that together with the whole cloning aspect of things.
Yeah, that was the question I was going to ask you. Is like, what possible role could the Zillo Beast have in Project Necromancer?
Mhm.
I
Exactly.
mean,
Yeah.
because they have the kids for the M counts. They've got Omega as the binding agent,
Mhm.
that helps them produce a successful M-count replication. Way back in the Clone Wars when we met the Zilla Beast, the whole idea was that, its hide was so tough and was impervious to blasters that they wanted to clone it in order to take advantage of that.
Hmm.
But I still don't that can't be what it's about now, because that's not what they're doing at all with the Zilla Beast.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's kind of a bizarre sort of turn of events for sure.
mhm. Man, they were
Ooh.
torturing that thing.
Yeah, I know. And to what end? What was the purpose of that? Because obviously they weren't torturing it just to torture it. It was a whole experimental kind of thing going on.
Yeah, they kept zapping with that, right? And I couldn't tell if that was to keep it in line or if that was in itself an experiment.
Mhm.
Doesn't matter probably because they're keeping it in something that's not nearly big enough, a room that's not big enough for it to flourish. Um,
Right. Yeah, and that's
so
the thing. Like it's there, but it's being very well contained or very closely contained.
yeah, yeah, but it's obviously part of Omega's plan. So I cannot wait to see what she does to turn
Mhm.
that thing loose in Tantus. But
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe Snoke is partially like related to the Zillo Beast in some way because he was so misformed, and large. He was huge, you know?
there is that. Yeah,
That's
that's
kind of weird to
that's
think
a
about.
possibility. Yeah, I mean, this series is what ties the prequels to the sequel trilogy
Mhm.
more than
Exactly.
anything else. So
Kinda
it's
weird to think about.
yeah, isn't it though? But yeah, I'm just really curious what Omega's gonna. I mean, to me, it seems like they get the Zilla Beast involved. If there was any doubt that Tantus was going to be around after this series, it seems to have been eliminated. I can't
Mhm.
imagine that thing being part of any escape plan and Tantus remaining intact
Yeah,
after
I'm
this.
with you. Yep.
And well, then what else does that mean? Is there suddenly a Zilla Beast loose on Wayland?
Oh gosh. Well, and here's the thing, like we said, there's only one episode left, and
Hmm.
instead of starting to tie nice little bows on things, it's just adding more and more to the mix to have to tie up.
Yeah. And when I was thinking about this, we've been in this position with so many shows before, whether it's been like different seasons of The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett. Now, obviously, those are live action. This is animation, but I think it the same thing remains. We're not going to get a bow on all the storylines that we want to have a bow on. There'll be
Mhm.
some things left open that may or may not get resolved on some other project in the future. For instance, Asajj Ventress.
Yes.
I don't think we're seeing her in the next episode, but we've been promised there's an explanation about how she's back that does not put that episode of The Bad Batch in conflict with Dark Disciple,
Right.
and that we should expect that at some point.
Right. And that's what I'm wondering is with the Bad Batch, even though, yes, we're going to get a finale next week, and, hopefully it will tie those loose ends up, that we're not going to end up seeing the batch possibly survive in some other entity. I would love to see them in live action. I just think that would be absolutely fantastic. And I have a whole thing for that. But at any rate, because we've seen crossovers obviously before,
Hmm.
Fennec Shand has been in the Book of Boba Fett and in the Bad Batch, you know what I mean? And. So, and now Asajj is in the Bad Batch and has been in the Clone Wars. And so you've got the opportunity to do more of an expansion and a crossover into other types of shows.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb, and I don't think we're gonna see the end of the Bad Batch. The I don't think they're gonna meet their demise necessarily in the next episode.
I hope you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at least Omega's gonna make it out of there with those kids,
Hmm.
but we'll see who else survives. And I don't know. I've just got a feeling about the rest of them. I and if they do make it out of there and they appear in future storytelling, I'm kind of wondering if they would bring them in live action, because can you really do that much Tamara Morrison in that many roles? You know what I'm saying? Because
Yeah.
and then have him pull off Hunter and Crosshair and Wrecker. That's a lot to ask of one person. It's one thing for a voice, but that would be a lot of prosthetic work. And then, essentially having a person fully perform, 4, 5, 6, dozen different roles. That's a lot.
Well, the Bad Batch do look enough dissimilar that they could honestly get live action actors to fill each one of those roles. Because you think about it,
Mhm.
Wrecker is huge. Hunter's got a completely different bone structure than the rest of them. Echo is pale. You know what I'm saying? Crosshair is super skinny. And so you've got enough of a physical difference between them that I think that they could very easily pull that off, quite honestly.
I don't know if I'd say very easily, but
Believably.
yeah, that might be the better word. But I don't know. I still, at the core, is Jango Fett of each one of
Mhm,
these guys, and you
mhm.
have to have some resemblance to him. And even though you just point out all those differences between these clones, they do have a striking resemblance between
Sure.
all of them in the face. So I don't. I feel, but anyways, that's all to say. I feel like if there's going to be future storytelling about the bat that includes these characters, then it's going to be an animation.
Mhm.
We'll
No, I
see.
think that's fair. That's
Yeah,
fair. Well, I do have a question before
sure.
we stray too far with Omega and her exploration of the innards of Tantis there. What the heck was the whole reason for her to do that? Just reconnaissance? I mean, if she knew that her brothers were coming for her, wouldn't she feel that she would be better off to stay put? Or do you think she was just trying to have a backup escape plan? And I'm assuming that those red boxes that were zooming up, past, down, across, and everything like that were samples of different things to be tested. What do you think of all
Yeah, I
that?
don't know what this was in the boxes. That could have been a communication system. That just could have been an interior transport and delivery system in there. I mean, that's, everything, all the samples we've seen collected before have been put in a tray and then taken by that person or the droid to the lab.
Mhm,
So I don't know if that's necessarily it. And like at first I was not looking at this the right perspective, and I thought it was like the lift in the base, but
mhm,
obviously it's too small for that. So I'm not entirely sure as to why she would do it. I think she has to be prepared to be on the move. And even though they are the Bad Batch, this is a top secret research facility stocked to the brim with clone commandos, other clones, potentially CX troopers, stormtroopers. And when she finds the Zilbeast, she finds a way to aid them.
mhm,
And she also can't be in a position where she's being held hostage.
mhm.
So I think there's a lot of
That's
different
true.
reasons why she might have been doing that. And yeah, and there's always the possibility that they got to be on the run, when the moment comes, because Hunter, Echo, Wrecker, and Crosshair didn't know anything about the other kids in the vault when they got to Tantis
Right.
until Emery said something to Echo about it. So she's got to be on the move. And plus, you know, she's also, they got to be able to find a shuttle in some other way off this world,
Mhm.
and she doesn't know exactly what it is that the Bad Batch did to get there, other than, they didn't get there in the Marauder because
Certainly not.
those destroyed episodes again. You know, back to this notion of like unresolved issues and stuff like that. All we've gotten about Sid this season was a passing mention from the
Right?
one CX trooper that he talked to the Trandoshan and got the information about this pirate that works with the Bad Batch, the Clone Force 99, I think is what they said. And obviously, that was Sid telling that clone about Fee. I'm very surprised about that. I thought for sure Sid was going to get her comeuppance this season at some point.
I know, especially like as you've just pointed out with that little name drop, that
Mhm.
it was almost like, oh, okay, we're gonna get a little bit more about Sid, but yeah, we never did.
And I
Surprising.
am, and if it wasn't her getting a comeuppance, I thought it would have been her getting redemption at some point because, you know, the in season 2, the Bad Batch have been warned on a number of occasions that you can't trust Sid. At the end of the day, she looks out for herself. So maybe she's more like Rampart than Crosshair is.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
and I kept thinking back in season 2 that was going to be a character moment, that when it came down to it, we were supposed to doubt Sid, and then she was going to come through for them. Well, obviously she didn't. And so it seemed natural that there might be, just because of so much Star Wars storytelling and countless other similar shows, that she would have a chance for redemption this episode. And no, she wasn't afforded that. And the only time that she was approached or we heard about her, she doubled down on her betrayal.
Right. Yeah.
So
So
that I
true.
was not expecting that this season at all.
Yeah, I mean, I guess only been so much time to really explore certain things, but it
Mm-hmm.
is definitely a loose end that is very perplexing for sure.
Mm-hmm. I wonder how she sleeps at night.
Yeah. Probably very well, knowing Sid.
Yeah, she's making money, so that's
Yep,
all important to her. So,
exactly.
all right. Well, I think we've covered this episode, but before we wrap it up, was there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Honestly, I think we've pretty much hit on everything.
Yeah.
So how about you?
No, I just can't wait for next week. I don't want the series to end, but the tension has been dialed up to an 11 over the past couple episodes, and now here we are at the final episode, and we're sitting on my edge of my seat, just waiting to see what happens to these guys, and
Right.
it's going to be tough to see it end. I hope we don't
Yes,
have to go too long before we hear what comes next, as far as like an animated series follow up to all of this, and
I agree.
yeah. Now,
Maybe it'll be the Adventures of Omega. They
yeah, I
just won't
mean,
call it the Bad Batch.
well, I mean, there's, this was a spinoff of the Clone Wars. You could do
Mhm.
a number of spinoffs of this that take us towards A New Hope or Andor and Rebels and the like, that could fill in some of the blanks. Rex and Gregor and that and Wolf. Those three.
Yeah,
What did they do all this time?
right.
Where's Cody? What's he been up to? He's been putting something together. There's a whole bunch of stories going on there. So there's a lot of possibilities, and we actually talk about this in an upcoming episode that's coming out in, well, probably 5 or 6 weeks from now. But anyway, um,
Mhm.
we'll save that conversation for then. But hopefully we
There
hear
you go.
about it sooner rather than later.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Well, then we'll go ahead and wrap up this episode of Podcast Stardust and our discussion of the penultimate episode of The Bad Batch. I just like that word, penultimate. It's pretty cool.
It is a
Um,
fun word.
we hope you all enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure you hit the subscribe button on your podcatcher so you will get our future episodes, which will include our discussion of the series finale next week. And we'll probably do a little bit more on The Bad Batch after that as we wrap up the season and the series. So make sure you stick around for that. Also, like to remind you can find the entire catalog of shows over on retrozap.com. So all previous 720 of them. Got a lot under our belts at this point. And you can find some other great podcasts over there covering retro culture, superheroes, Animaniacs, Love, Death, and Robots. A lot of stuff going over there. It's a lot of fun. Make sure you go check it out. As always, we greatly appreciate your 5-star ratings reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcatchers that support such reviews. And we love it when you share the show on your favorite episodes on social media with your friends. So with that in mind, Jay, remind everybody what our social media contacts are one more time.
It would be my pleasure. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and X at Podcast Stardust. And we also have our Pinterest boards with tons of fun things over there. And then we have 2 different YouTube channels, the regular YouTube channel and our YouTube music channel as well. So hit us up on both of those, like and subscribe. And if you're up for some real-time chatter, we do have a Discord room on the RetroZap Discord server. So if you'd like to join us for that, the link is in our show notes. Also in our show notes is a link to our TeePublic store, which has 7 different show logo designs available on all kinds of fun things from t-shirts and sweatshirts and coffee mugs and the like. And all of those purchases do help to support the show. So check out that link in our show notes as well. And then we are still partnering with Saber Masters. The Ultimate Lightsaber 2.0 is still available on a 2-for-1 deal over on the sabermasters.com website. And if you do happen to pick anything up, make sure at checkout that you put in the code Stardust and you will get an extra $10 off. So once again, the link to that will also be in our show notes. Lots and lots of links. So with that, Dennis, I know Warp Trails is in high gear right now and you've got lots of fun going on with that. So why don't you fill everybody in?
My wife Beth and I are having a good time talking about season 5 of Discovery, which also happens to be the final season of Discovery. Lots of finales this year, and of course, you can find all episodes of Warp Trails on the RetroZap podcast feed. In fact, that's the only place you can find them, including beyond RetroZap.com. And right, we've covered all the Star Trek that's been coming out on Paramount Plus, from the previous seasons of Discovery to Picard, Lower Decks, and Strange New World. So if you're interested in that, come check it out. Jay, what is the rundown on cosplay?
All right. So right now the cosplay train is still chugging away. I just did a couple of appearances recently at Fan Expo Cleveland and in Worcester, Ohio. And I have two coming up on May the 4th, actually. I'm going to be in Medina, Ohio for a Revelry craft extravaganza. And then also that evening at Grigio Wine and Cocktail Bar hosting a Star Wars trivia night. So you have to check out my Instagram for that. And also all of the other fun that I've been up to here lately as Ahsoka, the fourth sister, my two different versions of Hera, and my recently revealed original concept Mandalorian Tahiri Vela, which you can hear all about that build in our last edition of World Between Worlds. So check that out at j.snips cosplay.
All right. Upcoming on the show, Monday will be a look at Star Wars news. And then on Wednesday, this will be fun. We are going to do a discussion of the Marvel comic Star Wars Visions Takashi Okazaki #1. It's just a one-off comic related to the Ronin episode from the duel episode from Star Wars Visions, and it's a fun comic. So make sure you read it, and then come and check out the discussion on Wednesday next week. So with that, thanks for listening to episode 721 of Podcast Stardust. Have a great weekend, and until next time, may the Force be